Welcome to Q&A, a program that raises questions and provides answers to issues important to the community. Today's topic is social networking, the consequences of tweeting, texting, and emailing, or using internet sites like Facebook, MySpace, and Twitter. Our host is Kendra Cooper, a Massachusetts attorney and educator. Please join us for this discussion on social networking, Episode 7 of Q&A. Welcome to Q&A. I'm Kendra Cooper, host of today's program on social networking and law. My guests are two criminal attorneys, Jay Milligan and Mark Stevens. Jay practices in Massachusetts, and Mark in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Technology has developed at a tremendous pace, and the law is straining to keep up. Meanwhile, children, businesses, the public in general participate in social networking without understanding the consequences and the pitfalls. Mark, what is social networking?
Well, social networking is basically social networking websites or online communities made up of members, communities of individuals and groups with similar interests. And Facebook is the most popular one, Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. MySpace, they're growing by leaps and bounds, you know.
But like, what is this for people who don't use computers, or they don't know?
If you don't use a computer, it'll be hard to find Facebook.
Yeah, right. That's true. But I mean, but as far as Facebook is actually a site that people can access on a computer.
Right. If you went to Facebook.com, you could sign up and become a member and invite friends that you know, or accept invitations from friends, and that's how you would develop a social network on Facebook. That's an example of a social network.
Yeah, and MySpace is just another one?
Yeah.
Are these dating networks, or is this what people would consider?
I guess they could be, but they're basically sharing information, a way to get personal information out, share it, keep up with friends, old schoolmates, colleagues, people in the same profession, that sort of thing.
So
I guess people could use them for dating, I guess.
Yeah, well, there are many people
nice
that are
picture
on.
is, I guess.
But many different kinds of people are on Facebook. And it's not just lawyers, or it's not just teenagers, or people are trying to sell something, or.
No, I think there's all of the above. I mean, you have some control over who you can allow access to your social network. Mine is mostly lawyers. Jay's in my network. Other criminal defense lawyers and people that I went to high school with and so forth. But you have some control over who you can associate yourself, and that's kind of where you have to be careful.
Well, how does that differ from, say, emailing, or like when people email or people text, or is this all kind of connected to Facebook, or these are different?
No, an email is a one-to-one communication. If I want to send you some information, I can send it by email. You can email me back. If I put something up on my Facebook page, there'll be, I have thousands of friends on Facebook. They'll all see it, and you can make all of your information public so anybody can see it. And these things are picked up by Google. You can, they'll be indexed by the Google search spiders. And if you put something up on Facebook, then it's very public.
Right.
Whereas an email is just going to you.
Right, or the people that you want. But these are, and people can access this anytime.
Oh, sure.
The Facebook pages and things, okay. As far as...
if I Google your name, one of the things that may come up is something that you've posted on Facebook if it's public.
Oh, all right, all right. So it's, but you can make it more private, but you can make it more private.
Sure, Facebook has tools to where you can make it only allowable to your friends or to friends of friends, like a second level type of security, or you can just make it, certain people can look at it. Or you can make it public. If you're a commercial type of page and you want people to see what you're putting out there, then you could just make it public to anybody.
Right. Now, as an attorney, you have some concerns. I mean, both of you have some concerns. I know that's one of the reasons we're trying to do a program on this particular topic, because we realize that there are aspects of Facebook and MySpace and even Twittering and so there are different aspects of technology that really are having an impact on people from a legal sense as well.
I think the problem is people, like Mark was saying, when they Facebook a message or Facebook a topic, they're under the impression it's just going to their friend, when in fact this information can be accessed by really anybody who wants to get to it. For instance, on Facebook and these other, they ask for your date of birth, where you live. I mean, there's a lot of information there that somebody can get to use to your detriment, get your information, use it for fraud, what have you. And from a criminal lawyer's perspective, the information also that you put out there is accessible by law enforcement. People can look at this information, and in fact, you may be admitting to certain crimes or giving away certain aspects of crimes of what you've done in the past to law enforcement to help them prove you guilty of a crime. So I think people are under the impression that there's some, it's contained, when in fact it's the most public medium there is out there, and there's some concerns with that from a lawyering perspective.
Mm-hmm. When people, as far as I know with email, people have become so that they just write anything. It's almost like speaking, and that's a real problem because eventually there are many things that people would like to take back, but it's already out there, and once it's out there, then it just takes on a life of its own. It's particularly a problem with Facebook, though, with Facebook and some of these other social networking sites.
Well, it depends on what you put out there, whether it's a problem or not. Like Jay was saying, if you put things out, admissions of crime is a particularly bad thing to put out on Facebook, and we do see that sometimes. And MySpace has these questionnaires where sometimes, especially young people, will check off the box that, on a questionnaire that they've shoplifted or that they smoke a joint every day or they do all these other crazy stuff that may or may not be true, but they're certainly not things that you want to put out there and have public, particularly when you have a pending criminal case. So there's a lot of concerns with that kind of stuff. But, another concern that I have is that people will post that they're out of town, that they're in Florida. It's sort of like putting a sign out on your mailbox like no one's here this week, come on in and rob it. Pictures of themselves on vacation, declaring that they're not home, and these messages are all dated. It's very dangerous stuff to put out there.
And there are people that spend hours upon days trying to get information. That's their job. They're out there trying to gain information to commit crimes. And law enforcement, through FBI and other agencies, they have seminars. I mean, law enforcement have become very prolific in Facebook, tweeting, getting out there on Craigslist, finding people who are perpetrating crimes through these public mediums. And I don't know that the public's necessarily aware of that, and obviously they should be. Not only criminals, but the unsuspecting person who is going on vacation is telling his sister on Facebook that they're going away for the weekend, and not knowing that, in fact, when they come home on Monday, their house is going to be robbed.
And they may even have their home address on there, too, and their telephone number, all this other personal information that nobody who doesn't have it needs to know, so.
Is this something, too, with, is this a problem also with texting? I had read something about the ability of people to follow a text or follow something that they've sent through their phone and be able to tell the location of the phone. Have you heard of anything about that?
Oh, sure. The government can track your phone. They know where you are right now. They might put my phone over there and they know where it is if they wanted to.
Even if it's turned off? I mean, no, even if it's
sure.
turned off? They can.
Sure, yeah. They can track it through GPS. That's pretty easy for them to do.
So that would also be a way that people could tell whether people are home or not.
Well, I don't know if the average burglar is going to be able to have that capability. I don't think so. But I think people make it easy for them when they put all this information out there. Another is identity theft. If you're putting your birth date, the high school you graduated from, what year it was, the name and ages of your kids, these are really dangerous things. Pictures of the kids are not really a wise thing to put out there in the public forum either.
As far as the dates and the information, I mean, I was on last night just looking at all the questions that they had, and I noticed that that this is all just to sign up for Facebook, and I noticed that there are quite a few subjects that or topics, really private information. I felt like in some ways I was comparing it to signing up for a mortgage or something. I mean, they really do ask a lot of private information, and people don't have to give it.
They don't have to give it, but I think when they sign up, they feel like they're compelled to give it. Their friends have provided that information. I should provide that information. And like you said, it's a lot of personal information. What are your hobbies?
Right.
What do you do in your spare time? There's a lot of information out there that somebody can use to portray that they know you or know something about you, and use that to gain your trust and then take advantage of it. And so, like your birthday. There's no reason to put your birth date on there. Why? Because your whole Facebook page can know when your birthday is and wish you happy birthday. You know when your birthday is, and your good friends know when your birthday is. You don't need 1,000 people out there knowing when your birthday is. And the issue is people accept friends who they don't know. Mm-hmm. They say, well, this person is friending me. It might be a high school friend, and they accept people that they don't know, and that's the problem. This information gets out there.
I think what was disturbing me was they had 3 categories, and apparently it's new. I didn't know, but they have a category. You can either have different security levels, and one was friends. So this is just information that you want for a friend, and you can click off. You could click off your birth date or your religion, or there are a lot of different categories. And you could click off friend of friend. And that's kind of interesting because that opens you up to a host of other people that may be friends of a friend of yours, but you may not know them. And as you were just saying, that can make you very vulnerable.
We're nosy people. We are by nature nosy people. We want to know other people's business. That's why Facebook, Twitter, that's why these things work. Yeah. Everyone wants to be in everyone else's business. And so everyone wants to have, the brag is, well, I have 2,000 friends. Mm-hmm. Well, that's 2,000 people that know your information, and you may only know a handful, really know 30 of them. And so, it's in the business world, it's good to have people network because that means you bring in more business. But from a lawyering perspective, from people who want your information, having 2,000 friends and you only know 50 of them isn't necessarily the best thing in the world for you. And like Mark said, people have access to your pictures. While your parents or your brothers may not be members of Facebook, they can then use that information against you. And you don't hear it until something bad happens to somebody, but it is out there, and I don't think the media, they get bits and pieces of it, but like I said, I'm sure that there are people who spend hours and hours and hours every day trying to gain somebody's trust to then betray it.
Yeah, there was something I read actually in January. The Salem News had an article about some people who grandparents, and these are people that don't Twitter or tweet, or I don't even know if they have emails, but they got phone calls asking for money, and the way it came out is the police at this point believed that the callers had personal information about the family, and the grandparents believed that this was valid, that one of their grandchildren was in trouble. And apparently, in one case, victims wired $5,500 of money for bail, for bail money that was alleged, and then another for a rental car because people had lost their money or something. And it turned out that the police believed that the personal information that had convinced the grandparents that they indeed, that their loved one or their grandchild was in trouble had come through mining information on Facebook and some of the other social networking sites. So people really need to think about what's up there, but sometimes you don't know. I mean, how do you know what your friends put up? I mean, is there a way that you can tell what a friend of a friend might have put up about you? Gone to the same party?
Well,
maybe?
if you did a search of your own name, it's a good idea to use something like Google Alerts to search for your own name. I ping my own name every day just to see if it's coming up, if there's a report of a case or something. He probably does too. But you can set up Google Alerts for your name, your business name, and anytime anything pops onto the internet, you're going to get an alert, and there'll be a link to the story for you to read.
Oh, so it's connected
right.
Well that way.
I think Yahoo has something like that too, and I'm not trying to promote Google, but that's the one that I use.
Yeah. Well, what about, I've seen photographs when people go to parties, and I've seen that there'll be photographs of people at parties in various states of inebriation or what, I don't know. But they also tag them. It's something
it's alleged inebriation in our book. Yeah.
Alleged inebriation. But they tag them somehow. And so this is what so that kind of photograph would come up to if you...
Sure, you can tag somebody. If let's say Jay and I had a picture of ourselves here, and I wanted to tag Jay. I could do that. He would get it. It would go onto his page too. You can untag those too. Any picture that you don't like.
That's what I was wondering, if there are families that discover that there are some pictures out there and they say, we don't want,
Sure, you can go into the photo section of your Facebook page and go in and untag something if you don't want it tagged.
So, and that's not
that's
a
easy.
difficult thing to do?
No, it's very simple to do. I figured it out. So. What
happens when someone puts a photograph up and the family really doesn't want that up, but it's say a Yahoo site or a Facebook site or something that has this kind of photograph, and it's just maybe a family photograph, but there are some underage children that are all part of the Christmas photo or something. How does a family get that kind of photograph off if the person who put it up has an account and is over 18? And I mean, what alternative do they have?
I don't think that they have one,
That's
because if there's nothing
concerned
illegally about the publishing of it, I think that there'd be a First Amendment issue for that person, as long as it's lawful and
Right,
there's
yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
unusual about it or illegal. Then that person has a right to publish it if they've got access to it.
Yeah, even if there's someone underage who maybe is in the picture, but it's just a family photo. Yeah, well, see, that's, and
But I
that
think
can be a
that's an
problem.
unsettled issue too. When
Right.
you post up pictures on most of the social networking sites, it will say, do you have permission from everybody in the picture to use this? And of course, everybody clicks the box and says yes to get the picture up. But I don't think there's very much developed case law on what happens if you don't want your picture on so-and-so's site.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's and that could be a concern, especially if people, that some of the crazy postings you'll see anyway of people that and then with the proliferation of cameras and in phones, and I mean there's just so many ways that people can have photographs up that you may not want, especially if you end up having a case or some sort of traffic case. I mean, are there situations? I mean, what do you advise people now? I mean, when you think about, and obviously the case law is developing right now, and so because this hasn't been around. I'm thinking 10 years ago when kids were in college, this wasn't a problem as much because it hadn't
Right.
even happened. I mean, when did Facebook come out?
2004.
Okay, so it hasn't even been 10 years.
That's 6
And
years
it's
old.
totally
7 years.
changed.
Yeah, Facebook is 6 years old in February.
All right, yeah. So I mean, it's totally changed the way people are and the way they socialize, and they're not really together. But what kinds of things are you seeing in cases that are really turn out to be problems and nobody meant it to be a problem?
Well, I mean, first you start from a lawyer, and when we look at things, we always look at the Constitution. I mean, the way the Constitution has, in my opinion, been eroded to this point, they're going to just simply say, you've put this information out there, you don't have any rights. You've given up your right against self-incrimination, right to due process. So whatever's out there, you've put out there, and you've pressed that button. And so my guess is whatever constitutional application there is, they're going to say, no, it doesn't apply. Anything you put out there, the government can get. I'm convinced of it. For instance, we were talking about a rapper, an artist, who was literally getting pulled over by the police for an OUI, for a DWI, and he's tweeting behind a car that he's drunk. He's driving under the influence, and doesn't it come out that the police got this actual tweet that he sent out saying that he's under the influence of alcohol when in fact before he was even arrested. So people just don't think. And from my perspective, so what do I tell my clients? I don't want you doing any of that. Please don't take any pictures of yourself. Someone had told me a story about a sentencing for a woman who actually, it was I think a motor vehicle homicide where she killed somebody. And the week before she goes in jail, there's pictures of her on a Facebook page of her partying. And the judge, those pictures came to light to the judge, and the judge hit her for a larger jail sentence than I think everyone initially intended because she didn't take it as seriously and put those photos out there. And
Or maybe she did take it seriously, but it was out of context. I mean, like when you have those things on there.
yeah, I mean, it could be out of context, but I didn't see the photos. It was just, I heard it, through second sources. But, apparently she was inebriated, or it appeared to be inebriated, and, it would seem to infer that she wasn't taking it very seriously.
But it's a bad context. If you have a Facebook page of you drinking and whooping it up and you've got a pending DWI homicide case, it's a good idea to take the pictures down, even if they predated the incident.
Or not put them up to begin with.
Not put them up
Well,
to begin
yeah.
with.
So don't
But
make
if-
it public.
I'm saying if they already were up there prior to this incident happening,
Well, sometimes, and I know with emails and things like that, you can actually go to a site that's almost an archival one. Even if you've taken it down, if it no longer exists, that sometimes there are snapshots that are kept of prior postings. Is that the way it is with Yahoo? Or not with Yahoo, with Facebook? And in other
I
words,
don't
even
know.
if you
You
take
mean
it down, and I can't remember the site that it was, but
I don't know.
there's a site where you can actually
You
go
can get
back
old
and see.
emails like that and old reports that were on Google and stuff like that. They never really go away. I assume
That's what I
Facebook
was
is the
thinking. I'm
same.
wondering if it's
Right.
the same.
Yeah.
It's the same with Facebook.
Once something goes up onto the internet, I think it's never really goes away. It might not be
Somebody's
visible.
grabbed it.
Somebody can see it, and it's the cops. So,
Right,
so you
well-
have to be careful about what you put up there.
Right.
We do the same thing. We talk with people. If you have a Facebook page, if you have a MySpace page, if you have any kind of social networking page, please don't talk about your case, past victories in court, or anything else that might come back and bite you. It's just common sense.
I think there are a lot of.
But it's become such a trend, especially with young people, to say whatever's going on in their life on Twitter and
fast. Yeah, get it
Yeah,
out. Whatever
get it
you're
out
thinking
there. I'm
goes
going
right
to court
out.
today. I hope I beat this, even though I did it. You know, something crazy like that. You don't want anything out there. Don't talk about the case. Just like you would tell them not to talk about a pending case with their friends or a reporter or anybody like that.
Mark has a client that I thought was interesting. He did not heed Mark's advice not to tweet. Well, doesn't he tweet the local police are, you know, he's taunting them. And he wants to know why the police keep bothering him. Well, the officers, some one of them found it, and so when he's speeding, if it's between him and another vehicle, they keep catching him. Now, it's Mark's client. He keeps going back to him. He keeps doing a good job for him. But, you know, if you win a case, you shouldn't be taunting the police.
Don't brag about it.
Oh,
Yeah, that's not going to get you anywhere. And that's an example of how someone who just continues to, I guess, throw mud in the eye of the police, and it's just going to come back to bite him for a long time unless he moves out of that town.
Because you think about, too, if you put something out there, how many people do you really need to know about that? If I want to tell Jay something, I don't need to put it on Twitter to tell him. I just call him and tell him. We do tweet
I think
things
there
back and
seems
forth,
to be
but
more of that, just this need to, or this belief that they're to be hip or to be, you know, not really
And I
the,
think
word,
some
the right
people-
word, but to be,
Right.
to be
some people
part
feel
of the-
compelled to put everything, you know, I'm feeding my dog's outside doing number 2, whatever it is that they put on there. They put every little factoid about their life on these things. And you wonder, what,
And do we need
what
to
do they do
know?
for work? You know?
Right,
I was
yeah.
reading, I think it was the New York Times reported, I think the average person spends 8 to 10 hours, the average American, on Facebook a month.
Really?
It's like a full
Really?
workday on Facebook alone. That's just on Facebook, aside Twitter, MySpace, and the other social networking sites. It's amazing.
Since
I
I
think
don't
there's
spend
some-
very long, then somebody's spending
Someone's
a real
making
long
up for you.
time.
Someone's making up for you.
they're all-
Right? And
they're
it's not
definitely-
us.
They're definitely, you know, making that. You know, there's been a lot of legislation in different states, and I know in Massachusetts, I think it's the House just passed at least part of a bill that would ban text messaging for 16, 17-year-olds, but they're still saying that hands-free is probably okay. Now, it hasn't gone to the Senate, so who knows what's going to happen with it, but it seems to be a really serious problem of people being distracted.
I don't think it's just 16, 17-year-olds. I mean, if you're texting, your eyes are not off the road. It doesn't matter how old you are. I agree. I think it's a good bill. I think, you know, it's now instead of picking up the phone and calling somebody, you just text. It's easy. You know, for some reason, it's easy to do. For me, it's easy to just pick up the phone and call somebody and say, "Hey, here's what I need."
And just for
But that's not.
for somebody who's never seen texting, exactly what's so unique about that?
Well, it's the same as calling in a message, except it's a little bit quicker. You type out the message and send it. I text him all the time.
But you use abbreviated words too. mean,
I don't,
when
but
you-
I'm old.
you don't.
I
There
used
is-
to- I-
there is a
I used
language
to-
for the
There's
kids
a
out there.
language
the
for
that-
whole
kids,
word.
all right. Well, like
Yeah.
fags, TH,
Yeah.
X or something, or
I
what.
spell the whole, I
just-
correct my spelling
It's almost
mistakes.
like a
but
shorthand, you know,
Yeah.
for them instead. But it's something they can do on their cell phone.
Yeah,
on
oh
their
yeah. Yeah, they do
BlackBerry
it from
or-
the BlackBerry, they do it from the smartphone or whatever. But New Hampshire just passed a law that went into effect on January 1, an anti-texting, I think they call it distracted driving, but it was geared towards the texting. You can still talk on the phone, but you can't be texting while you're driving. And it's a common sense law, I think.
Yeah, you can talk on the phone by holding it with your hand or just hands-free.
No, you
Is
can
that
hold it
New
with your
Hampshire?
hand, you can hit a redial, you just can't,
Okay.
you can't be typing out a message, which makes sense, because you can't, you drive by somebody on 93 like I do every day, and they're looking down. with
And they're
both
looking
thumbs
down
going
instead
like
of
that.
ahead.
I know they're
It's
not
okay.
looking at me, so, you know,
Yeah.
I'm glad that they passed it.
And then all they need to do is get a court order, get your phone records, and they can verify what you were doing at that particular moment in time.
See,
So
that's what I don't
it's
think
easy
that
to-
they understand that either. Now, there was that train wreck out in California, a year or so ago, and they were able to tell that that person was texting, the train engineer, or was it a cell phone or was it that? I know that they were able to obtain the
I
records.
thought he was texting.
Was he? Yeah, I think it was texting because it
They
was,
could tell exactly
it was
what time.
relatively early.
Yeah, exactly what time you're doing that.
Yeah, and so it's important. People think that a lot of this is private, whether it's Facebook or texting. Now, Twittering would be comparable to email in a way, as far as records go, being able to go back.
Kind of,
to
except more
something.
people can see it. If you tweet something, everybody on Twitter, it goes through a public timeline, can see it.
Oh, really? Oh, I
Sure.
didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was still kind of private to just to
No,
your
no, not
friends.
at
You're
all.
no?
tweeting for a reason, that is to get it out to a
Just
mass
to get it out there.
media.
Oh, yeah.
So when
Yeah,
you
so
do,
if you put something out, like you follow people, and people will follow you, so I'll get everything that the people who I follow text, like I follow Newsweek, I'll get everything that Newsweek texts, tweets rather, and people will follow me, and they'll get whatever I tweet out there. But it's a public timeline. If I put out there, I'm on this show with Kendra and Jay, and it's out there for anybody to see.
Oh, so they'll know. So then they'll burglarize your house. Will they know?
Well, no, I'm going to do it when I get home.
You'll do it when you get home.
I'm going to do it when I get home. Right.
Well, you have to be careful too.
Yeah, I've got a dog watching the house too, so
Oh yeah, right.
don't
a
come to my
vicious
house.
dog.
This is being taped too. It's not like.
That's right.
So-
That's right. That's true. Yeah, so we don't do it live. So you know, thinking about your practices and thinking about what you know about the technology and how much has changed. You know, like what do you think is the primary thing that you would want to make sure people understand about all of these changes and the fact that the law is really just trying to catch up?
My advice would be just think about what you're putting out there. You know, I think inherently we want to trust people, but I think you should reverse that. Whatever you put out there, you should assume people you don't want to see it can see it or look at it. And I think if you operate under that assumption, that would be advisable.
And that includes pictures of your family, pictures of vacations, that there's a possibility that other people are going to be able to somehow get access through friends of friends of friends, maybe.
People are always going to try and take advantage of somebody else. That's just the way society is. And whether it's pictures of your kids, you know, there are people out there who are looking for pictures like that. You know, and there's a lot of people out there looking for pictures.
And there
like
were
that.
sick people out there who, you know, we are not even dealing with the pornography and predators and people like that. And it's with the social networks and the dating sites that people are setting up. I'm pretty concerned about some of the teenagers and people who go on. Even actually, it's not even teenagers. It's even people that are my age who maybe are widowed or are divorced. And they're putting themselves out there and not being careful about what they indicate to people who could be in California or overseas. And, you know, there's a lot of deception going on, and I'm kind of concerned about those people.
Sure.
Being careful, especially if you go to the Facebook page and you look at the kinds of information that if you put it out and you don't select friends only, it's automatically, you know, checked for everybody. And I was very surprised that it's automatic like that, because people have to make a concerted effort to check that it's, you know, to limit maybe the access of their private information.
Well, I think too, you don't want to rely on Facebook to be your own personal security.
Right.
And if you, even if you check off the friend box that you're only anticipating your friend seeing it, I always tell people, assume that a creep is reading this, assume that a bad guy is receiving this message, and would you want them to read it? Is it something that would expose you to some kind of identity theft or a robbery or anything like that?
Well, one of your friends could easily be hacked, and then all of this information, and they can assume their identity. And that's something we haven't really talked about either. Is
you could have
the
a friend
way
who makes
identity
everything
theft
public.
You know, it's but this whole identity theft thing too. If someone hacks
it's scary.
someone,
If you put in, I've seen people that Facebook will ask for your address and your phone number. I've seen people's home phone numbers on there with their birth date, the names and ages of their kids, everything you would need to apply for a credit card except the Social Security number. And it's pretty scary to be posting that stuff up there.
Yeah.
And
So
there's no reason for it if you think about it. Why does anybody who needs to know your birth date knows it? It's like Jay was saying.
right, you
know?
don't really want to have it out there because there are so many other things that people can use that for. You don't want that.
I guess
So-
when you're 21, you're still happy about it, but I don't really.
Yeah, I know. Right now, we don't want it to
want
know.
2,000 people know
we
I'm
don't
another
want
year
them
older.
to know. Yeah. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add? I mean, I know that Jay was
Just
talking
that I
about-
always think, think of anything you post on the internet as a postcard. And if you wouldn't want your mailman to read it, don't put it on there. Even if you think only your friends are getting it, there's no good reason on earth to put something up there that you don't want everybody on the planet to be able to read.
Well, I really appreciate your coming today. I know this has been a
for
topic
having
we've
us.
been discussing and really kind of having concerns about what's out there and some of the information that people put out. So I hope it's been helpful. Thank you for joining us.